Well, guys, it gives me no pleasure to do this, but I've been tracking the programming decisions over at the Rachel Maddow show lately a little bit, and the reason why I've been doing it is because she has massive influence within the Democratic base. She's arguably one of the most influential figures in terms of electoral results and what's happening and what the general groupthink is within the Democratic Party. So it's been interesting to watch how she handles the transition from the Trump era to the Biden era. And a notable thing happened this week. She actually criticized Joe Biden, but guess what for? Not being sufficiently pro-Russiagate enough. Let's throw this up on the screen. So here's the headline from Raw Story. Rachel Maddow demands to know why Merrick Garland is trying to paper over Bill Barr's cover-up for Trump. This is all about, there's apparently a memo that explains within the Department of Justice why they decided not to suggest charges against Donald Trump. And look, I mean, I'm for transparency. I'm fine with let's release the memo, sure. But I just think it's very noteworthy that this is, to my knowledge, the first time she's criticized Joe Biden. Of course, this is what it's over. And so I went back and looked at some of the transcripts from this week to see what she's covering. And it's like still Russiagate there. Every little, and then it's like, you know, all in on the Arizona election audit and all of that stuff as well.
Not that isn't a story, which we covered this week.
Absolutely.
Right.
But the interesting thing to me was that over on her, in her hour, it's still like Donald Trump almost night after night after night. And then in terms of how she's approaching Biden, this is, again, to my knowledge, the first criticism. When the violence was happening, when Israel was attacking in Gaza, she said very little about it until there was a ceasefire. Biden called for a ceasefire so she could take his side. She said nothing about the need to lift vaccine patent protections to make sure that the world can get vaccinated until Biden weighed in and she could say, oh, good job, Joe Biden.
Right.
So just very revealing, and again, why it's significant. She has the highest ratings over on MSNBC. Her words are taken as like the gospel by a significant chunk of the Democratic base, really drives the direction over there, and very interesting that it's still very heavy on the Trump content.
No, it's nuts because it also shows that they're losing their audience and they still just can't adjust. They continue to double down on what they know, which actually does lead me to a scarier conclusion. It wasn't just that it was about the ratings. Somewhere along the line, they started to believe it.
Oh, I think they
started to believe it, and then they started to believe it was the most important story in the country. That is the only thing that can explain their insanity and zealotry, which they continue. And so all of the coverage and the way that they're moving it is actually sticking us in a worse place. And this is why I hate Fox now and I hate MSNBC, because neither are focusing for their base, who are all in, bought in over years of trust on issues that actually really matter to them in their lives. There's a lot to criticize Joe Biden for. There's a lot to criticize the Republican Party for. What is Fox actually talking about? Dr. Seuss or whatever? You know, I mean, they're not covering the things that are really, should be animating, I believe, to people who are the most politically engaged in America. Same thing on MSNBC. If you watch her show, you probably don't even know about criticisms of Biden on his handling of Israel. You're just like, oh, yeah, you did fine. Same thing on his infrastructure package. It's like, oh, it just, happened to disappear into the ether. Not that they're going to cover that. They're going to be like, oh, the president continues. It's a disservice in order to hold people to account. And also, these people have a responsibility. And maybe I'll sound like a lib, whenever I say these things. But I think they do. Now, their job is to make money, and I understand that. But they're not actually doing a very good job at keeping their audience engaged, and they're actually making this country just so much worse off.
I really think
that's what bothers me the
most. When people have, Rachel Maddow has a very devoted following.
Yeah.
I mean, there aren't actually that many cable news hosts who actually have a following.
No, it's like her and Tucker, basically.
It's basically her and Tucker. I mean, it's hard to think of, it's literally hard to think of a single other person that would fall in that same category where, no matter what platform they went to, there would be a contingent that would follow them, that would show up to hear what they have to say and take it like it's gospel. That really gives you a certain responsibility. And so the other thing I see signs of is I think they're going to be all into on the grand jury that's convened in New York to potentially indict Trump on tax evasion charges or whatever that it comes out that they're actually looking at. And again, it's not that this isn't a story, right? We covered it here. It's definitely worthy of coverage. Yeah. But they will go all in on these things.
All they cover.
It's the only thing they cover. And so one of the things that you have to understand about the media is like those editorial decisions of what we're going to focus your attention on, and by the way, what we're not going to point out and what we're not going to focus attention on, those have massive, massive implications. So it was just interesting to me to take a look over there and see what she was doing. And keep in mind, this is what's working best over on MSNBC right now. She still has overwhelmingly the highest ratings on the network.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this once in a monologue, what they choose not to show you is more important than what they show you. And I will always believe that, which is that what the media chooses to cover is less important than what they choose not to cover. Editorial omission is the most powerful thing in the mainstream media. That's why when people, if you go and you talk to someone who's an avid Fox viewer or whatever, they don't even have the knowledge around why so much of Stop the Steal claims are complete bullshit. They have no idea. Yeah. They're like, well, I saw this one video. And then Fox, it's not that they are like showing the video from YouTube, but they're not debunking it either.
Right.
And same thing on Russiagate. It's like, you would have no idea that the Mueller report completely undercut everything they said for 3 years because they wanted to spin it a different way. Or they just took select cherry-picked all the little things out of it that kind of supported some of the things they said over the years. I mean, can you blame somebody sitting at home who hates Trump, who's been imbibing this stuff for 3 years, not knowing? Maybe. I mean, sure, people have personal agency, but the media organs, they have a responsibility too. And they've just failed us over and over again. And I'm glad you're highlighting it because it's just so terrible.
Now apparently Merrick Garland is part of the plot against America.
Yeah, right. That's where we're at right now.
All right, guys, more rising for you after this.